traditional media does a better job of factor. Don't we hold them to an entirely different standard? Fox News knows that they're spreading misinformation about voting machines being weaponized by Hugo Chavez. They knew it was a lie. They continue to promote that misinformation. They get fined $750 million. What happened on Fox was a dumpster fire compared to the nuclear mushroom cloud that happens every 3 minutes on social media. 2/3 of Americans get their news from social media, and yet they are held to absolutely no standards.
Bill asked the panel about gambling scandals and then shifted into a bigger conversation about misinformation, media standard, and the double standard between traditional outlets and social media. Here's how it unfolded.
This is for you, Scott. Does the sports gambling scandal reflect a larger societal problem? I guess they mean that both in basketball now and in baseball. We've had 2 scandals where the players were in on it. That hasn't happened in a while. Does this reflect a larger societal problem?
Yeah, you could argue that the most profitable companies in the world tap into a flaw in our instincts. And since we came off the savannah, absence of salty, sugary, fatty foods, absence of mating opportunities, and absence of free play and gaming. So we become addicted to trans fats, addicted to porn, addicted to gambling apps because we're not used to the institutional production. Our instincts haven't caught up to the institutional production. Gambling is probably unfortunately, another thing that's tapping into a pretty immature male brain that wants more dopa hits. 1 out of 2 college-age males bet on the Super Bowl. And you're going to see probably the biggest IPOs of next year will be Kalshi and Polymarket, because now they're trying to pretend that it's not gambling if you're betting on a mayoral race. The reality is when you legalize gambling in a state, you see bankruptcies go up 30%. And this is not investing. It's essentially, again, putting Vegas in people's pockets. And it's going to have really negative externalities. I'm not entirely sure what you do about it because you don't need to want to infantilize people, but you need to educate young men to be clear. You're not investing, you're gambling. And the only reason these companies are going to have the biggest IPOs next year is because over the medium and the long term, it's impossible to lose. So have a good time, have at it. I love Vegas, but be clear, you're going to lose all your money.
You know, they say that these GLPs actually decrease your desire for gambling. Have you found that? You're less
GLPs, that's Ozempic?
That's Ozempic and Wegovy.
I have not. I mean, I'm not a huge gambler. I'll go to Vegas. I'll play some craps. I'll play poker. It hasn't changed my desires around that. But I think that the crazy thing with these scandals is they're not even betting on the games. They're betting on things like, will the next pitch be faster than 97 miles an hour?
Right.
So you can bet on every pitch.
Every pitch.
And that means that if you're a pitcher, you can all you have to do is flub 1 pitch. You don't have to conspire with the rest of your team to lose the game. So I think legalizing sports gambling has not gone great. I would be happy to see us go back to the old system. But one other thing they could do is they could prohibit some of these proposition bets that are especially vulnerable to these kinds of scandals, and then also go to this kind of degenerate behavior. It's like, why do you have to bet on every individual pitch? Can't you watch the baseball game and maybe just bet on who's going to win the game?
And just enjoy the game.
But I wonder, I mean, of course, I agree with you. I wonder once technology has been unleashed and you can do all this, so people, if you ban it in America, won't they just set it up in the Cayman Islands and then you do it through there?
Well, I mean, I think the other thing we're seeing is it's pretty easy to catch the people who do these schemes. A lot of these pro athletes are not that bright. And like if there's like a whole bunch of huge bets on random actions of some not especially famous player, like it's easy if you get a leaked copy of the earnings report and you buy a ton of options 3 hours before it comes out, the SEC will catch you. Sort of similar stuff here where like some people will just go to...
Unless you're a congressman.
This whole gambling discussion really shows how the landscape has changed. Betting used to be something you physically went somewhere to do. Now it's in everyone's pocket 24/7. And like Scott said, the dopamine cycle hits a lot harder with every pitch, every moment, and every prop becomes a bet. Most people think they're investing, but the math says otherwise. The house doesn't lose over time.
What is the panel's reaction to the turmoil at the BBC over how they edited Trump's January 6th comments? Well, they did do him dirty. We have no doubt about it. They purposely put together something to make it look like he didn't say what he said. Or the opposite.
The tragedy is what he said was bad enough. Why did you have to doctor him? I mean, I don't understand it. It was, because
that one to me was never a smoking gun. Now, do I think he should have handled January 6th differently? Very much so, I do. But it was always, you can pull out the thing where he says peaceful protest. He uses the word peaceful. It was always murky. To me, the crime was always simply never conceding the election.
And calling up the Georgia Secretary of State and saying, find me 11,000 votes.
But that wasn't that day.
Yeah.
And waiting for like 3 hours to try to call the mob off. Like, you should have
But I'm saying from the whole time the election was over until this very moment, he still hasn't done it. When you don't concede elections, yes, they're going to be.
That's my point. Is there's plenty of stuff that he's done that you just have to list as you just did. You don't need to make stuff up. You don't need AI for this.
Upside wrong.
Yeah.
Traditional media does a better job of fact. Don't we hold them to an entirely different standard? Fox News knows that they're spreading misinformation about voting machines being weaponized by Hugo Chavez. They knew it was a lie. They continue to promote that misinformation. They get fined $750 million. What happened on Fox was a dumpster fire compared to the nuclear mushroom cloud that happens every 3 minutes on social media. 2/3 of Americans get their news from social media, and yet they are held to absolutely no standards. And when the BBC fucks up, our hair's on fire. Why on earth are we not applying anything resembling the same standards for algorithmically elevated content to these quote unquote nascent platforms? I get that the BBC screwed up, but by that standard, where we're getting 2/3 of our news screws up about 1 million times a second, there's a double standard here. We need to make big tech and where people get their news a fraction as accountable as we want to hold the BBC or CNN or Time Warner. A double standard, it needs to end.
Let me know your take. Do you trust legacy media more, social platforms more, or neither? If you found this breakdown helpful, feel free to subscribe. I always appreciate the support.